Men often find themselves blindsided by a culture that hates authentic masculinity, and many have given in and succumbed to the ever-evolving culture and woke society. But not us. We are the Remnant, faithful Catholic men from 3 different generations who reach through the radio to tackle current events that challenge our wills and empower the practice of the Catholic faith through thought-provoking discernment and prayer. So, if you're feeling overwhelmed and bombarded, it's time to turn your radio up and join us for The Remnant on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network.
Hey everybody, welcome to The Remnant here on the Carolina Catholic Media Network. It is wonderful to be with you. I'm Bill Snyder, joined as always by my friends Ray Haywood and Stephen Thomas. Before we jump into tonight's episode, I want to remind you that the Remnant Show is sponsored by the Fraternity of St. Joseph Men's Group. Visit fsjjourneyman.com to review the easy-to-follow resource documents and consider starting a chapter of the FSJ Men's Group in your own parish today. On this episode, we're going to be talking about the Synod and the role that the Diocese of Charlotte will be playing in it. So welcome, gentlemen. And Stephen, I'm going to turn it over to you because you've got some really great stuff to kind of frame our conversation here this evening.
All right, awesome. It's glad to be here. So the Synod on synodality. So I guess what really brought this all to our attention was, I think 3 weeks ago or so now, at all of the Sunday masses across the diocese, Bishop Jugas had a letter for the priests to read, and it went over sort of the framework of what's going to happen, what the purpose is, and what it looks like for parishioners. So the primary thing to note is that it talks about a couple different themes, which I'll get into. But to just lay the concrete framework, it has town hall styled meetings worked into it where each faith community, be it a monastery or convent or a parish or anything that fits those categories, is going to have its own town hall style meeting. And to coordinate this, the bishop has nominated Professor Alessandro Ravati of Belmont Abbey College, who is going to work his way around through these communities and help coordinate and guide the purpose of these meetings. So I'll kind of get into the meat of it here and read some excerpts of it, which I think will summarize, and then I'll give you some of my thinking on it preliminarily. So I'll begin with this from the letter. Accordingly, I ask all the members of our diocese to use the coming months to consider the following questions. And then this is the part that stuck out. It's in italics, and it kind of reads to me like an essay prompt. What is your experience of ecclesial communion, mission, and participation in your life? How does the church help you in living them out? What challenges or struggles are you facing as you try to embody them? What steps is the Holy Spirit suggesting to call us to live our vocation as a pilgrim people that journeys together towards salvation more fully? That's the end of the italics. I'll read on a little bit more. I invite you to join me in participating intentionally in the synodal path that the Holy Father has called us to, for I am certain it will bear much fruit in the life of our diocese. In particular, the Synod offers us 3 opportunities. First, the Synod is an opportunity to encounter the Lord and what he is calling us to, both as individuals and as a church. This means keeping our eyes focused on the Lord, and here's the important part, resisting the divisiveness that characterizes much of our public discourse in society and would tempt us to turn the Synod into a power struggle to affirm our ideas or positions. Instead, the Holy Father is encouraging us to foster an authentic dialogue characterized by prayer, humility, and an openness to what the Holy Spirit is doing in our midst. Second, the Synod is an opportunity to learn that the Lord uses all circumstances in our lives to summon us to closer unity with him. Even the struggles we face and the questions we discover in ourselves are ways God uses to invite us into ever-growing unity with him. This means we need to, and here's the important part in this one, to resist the temptations of complacency or defensiveness and look instead with honesty at both the joys and obstacles we experience in trying to live as his disciples. Third, the Synod is an opportunity to discover that the other is a gift for our journey of faith. We are all brothers and sisters in Christ, the pilgrim people of God who walks together, sustaining each other with our prayers and witness. This means resisting the culture of enmity that reduces the other to the sum total of things we disagree about, or lets political ideologies or disagreements completely determine how we look at each other and the world. So I'll conclude there for now. So my thinking on this is that His Excellency wants to emphasize productive dialogue. And I think he does pretty well at saying, this is what we're going to do. Here's what I want to avoid. Point 1 has that. Point 2 has that. Point 3 has that. We have a tendency in our culture to devolve civil discourse into ad hominem attacks and incendiary mudslinging. And you see that all over secular media. And that's sort of my read on the general decorum that characterizes American media today. Listen, we are Catholics, and we must be, and we are called to be better than that. We can't allow this disease that permeates the secular mindset to infect the discourse of our people as we articulate charting the course for our communities during this time of dialogue. This means openness to being critiqued without becoming defensive, and embracing a true spirit of humility even when we are convicted that we are right. That doesn't mean we need to just rub it in the opposing views' faces. The Catholic Church is unique in that we have the guarantor of the Holy Spirit. It ensures the orthodox position will prevail. That's right belief. It is up to us to pray for our leaders and faithfully utilize this opportunity to ensure that our voices are heard as we endeavor together to encourage orthodox positions and encourage a further union based in charity and mutual understanding between the lay faithful and the church leadership. I've been pondering this since the promulgation of this document a few recent weeks, and I've had the pleasure of discussing it in my various groups. And I can understand how some are uneasy and even pessimistic about the future progression of these proceedings and how they'll be interpreted. So if you're feeling that way, this is my advice. Speak. Go and participate. Even if you go and for whatever reason don't feel heard, trust in the fact that the Lord God, your Father, hears you. For this is our belief in God, the Father, that he shall right every wrong and balance every scale at the end. And to me personally, I take a great deal of comfort in that. So my last thought before we open up further into discussion is we can't fall into the fallacy, and well, you could also say this is heresy as well, of indifferentism. That's the belief that no one position on religion, meaning religious belief or religion overall, is any better than the other. In a way, that could be considered a kind of theological nihilism. We are a people of faith, of hope, and charity, created in order to pursue what is true, good, and beautiful. We must not believe the implicit presupposition of indifferentism, that it is not important to address the issues, not important to find what is right, for they must be addressed. For the sake of clarity and unity, if we follow the guidelines put forward by His Excellency the Bishop, we will do our part as lay faithful to encourage and ensure that orthodoxy will prevail in the Synod. Fellows, what do you guys think?
I think you did an amazing job laying out this whole process, and I'm really excited for the Diocese of Charlotte to have such a instrumental role from their bishop taking the lead. Here in Milwaukee, that's not, at least I haven't seen it being the case yet, where our bishop is yet to make a public letter, much like you kind of laid out. But I think there's so many things about understanding one another that you mentioned, right? But without losing the orthodoxy of the faith, that is really so needed at this time. You mentioned the media too, right? You mentioned how divisive the media is, and all that the world wants to do. And Ray, this is in one of your books about the wedges of the world, right? This is how they just try to put the wedges in between our fellow man, right? They don't want unity. And so this is something now I do think the synod on synodality is kind of like a meeting on, a meeting for meetings. You know what I mean? It's like, when you hear that, you're like, hey, wait a minute, what is this really all about? But I think it's about creating a community, right? This community that can move forward in truth and in charity and love. And so I'm really excited to see where the global church takes it, and certainly excited for the Diocese of Charlotte that you have a wonderful leader who is you're leading the charge there, and Bishop Jugas.
Yeah, I hope that it gets people more invested, active participation, and all that. It's hard for people to feel invested when they don't feel that they play a part. And of course, like the church has a hierarchy, and we need to respect that. But what occurs to me when you were laying out what you were saying was that I think this might be a way of a vehicle of catechesis, ultimately. That it's a way to get people invested and give them an insight into why things are what they are. Because I think there's been such a catechetical collapse in this country that has gone hand in hand with the demographic collapse of Catholic numbers. And if you look at that, like I look at places like the Pillar, and you can look at why do people leave? Because they think that it's not important. Well, guess what? We've been invited into a important event. This is a big deal, and we are going to participate in it. He invites all members to participate in these town halls, and they'll matter.
Yeah.
So we have this opportunity that we have to utilize.
Absolutely.
Yes. And when I think about the things that you brought into the conversation, Stephen, I could tell you what I wrote down. I was taking notes, and the things that jumped out at me, being older, I see these opportunities, but I also look at the challenges ahead. So town hall, right? Then I hear productive, then I hear critique, then I hear speak. These things don't go well together, and then I hear about, as you go on, and you place it out so well for us, because then you go into right belief. And then when I hear right belief, I think to myself, okay, well, how is right belief going to come into play when we have so many adolescent Catholics who are stuck in situational truth? They don't understand what objective truth is. Now, I'm not spinning a negative spin onto this. Mm-hmm. What I'm trying to do is to bring into view for the older men, for when our younger parts, our counterparts, our younger Catholics come at us in a negative way because they don't understand what's being presented here. They actually just step closer to, like, when they want to find something, they Google it. First thing that pops up, that's what they come with. So there's not the depth there. So what I would like is for us older people to understand the depth that's needed to actually approach this well, and to understand that adversity is how we grow, and to hear what's being said, and for us to actually give our younger counterpart Catholics that opportunity to be heard, not to cancel them out like they cancel us out, to actually reflect well, not to mirror. This is hard stuff we're talking about. And then Stephen puts in this word, indifferent. Just say that word for me, Stephen.
Indifferentism.
There you go, baby. There's another show for us. Right or wrong, we're going to get to objective truth one way or another.
Oh, absolutely. No, and I'll tell you, Ray, I do think that there is so much work that has to be done in the church with the listening aspect of it. Amen. Just being able to listen and hear it out. I remember working recently on a project for the Catholic Charismatic Renewal here in our diocese, and we tapped into the awesome power of the Episcopacy in Green Bay with Bishop David Ricken. And in his talk on prophecy, he actually mentioned that. He mentioned that one of the most important things a prophet can do is actively listen. And so there's something to be really said for that. We do have to take a short break here, but then when we come back, we're going to continue our conversation. We're going to be talking about our Saint of the Week, St. Catherine of Siena. Stay tuned to the Carolina Catholic Media Network. We'll be right back after these messages.
Hello, my name is Ray Haywood, and I'm coming to you today to speak to you about the Fraternity of St. Joseph Men's Group. a men's group that was started under the leadership of Father Matthew Card by the intentional men of the parish of St. Thomas Aquinas here in our Diocese of Charlotte, North Carolina. In our first efforts, we were asked if we would model our men's group in a way that other parishes could simply follow. With that intent in mind, we created the FSJJourneyman.com website. On that website, you can find all that is needed to create your own chapter of the Fraternity of St. Joseph Men's Group in your parish, as well as resource documents that we are intentionally placing into our faith community. We hope that you will step closer to the path and to each other in the just model of St. Joseph as you consider creating your own chapter of the Fraternity of St. Joseph Men's Group.
Welcome back to The Remnant on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network.
All right, guys, welcome back to The Remnant. So we're going to hit you with our Saint of the Week this week, St. Catherine of Siena. So if you know anything about her, you probably can take a guess as to why we picked her. So she is a church mystic, but she also had quite the political life. So she accomplished a great deal, despite only being 33 at the time of her death. So not a lot of time to do a lot, but she did quite a great deal. So the most noteworthy accomplishment of hers in the context of this podcast is reconciling the political disputes of the Avignon papacy. For political reasons, the Pope left Rome, established his see at Avignon in France, and was there for nearly 70 years. So Rome is absent. It's pontiff, and Rome. It's without we have the church without the head at its ancestral seat. So Saint Catherine is continually writing and petitioning Pope Gregory XI to return to Rome, and he finally does in 1377. So moved by this just so sweet language that she uses in these letters. So I'll read you a quote of hers that I uncovered while I was doing research for this, and it's just a particularly potent piece of language from the summer of 1376. And it goes like this. Ah me, Father, I die of grief and cannot die. Come, come, and resist no more the will of God that calls you. The hungry sheep await your coming to hold and possess the place of your predecessor and champion, Apostle Peter. For you, as the vicar of Christ, should abide in your own place. Come then, come, and delay no more, and comfort you, and fear not anything that might happen, since God be with you. Close quote. So that made me think, all right, my challenge has to be something like this. I want you to go into the world and make at least one intentional and conscious effort to counteract that spirit of disunion and divisiveness that our bishop has so articulately told us about. This is all the more fitting because right now we're in this season of Advent, the second penitential season. It's not just Lent. Perhaps this may entail something like deleting Twitter or Facebook until after Christmas. See, I deleted Facebook, and that was tough. By now, I bet you're already thinking, I have that one thing that I know I ought to give up. And when Stephen says it, I know I need to do it. So that's the social trap, that's what society lays the pit for us to fall into, and we're scrolling and we find something, we're mad about it, or we're like, oh, it's silly. It's the sensationalism culture. So what I want you to remember is that the world will go on and you will be just fine if you don't know about the latest news story or controversial post that one relative you have puts on their Facebook feed. So I invite you, try this out, and you might find that there are benefits. I know that it has for me. I remember I was eating dinner with my fiance and my future father-in-law, and he mentioned something, and I was like, wait a minute, I haven't heard about this. It happened today? Because normally I'm all on top of it. And I was like, this is actually almost gratifying in a way, because I had not gotten into that sensationalism as much that day. And that's a small win. So I invite you to start the path of small wins. What you guys think?
Okay, so I had a really good experience with my son Nicholas today, actually. So I was preparing for this Saint of ours, Saint Catherine of Siena, but I had some things in mind. But then on our way out to do the rosary in the Irish pub that we go to, Stephen, you're aware of that, right? Out in, I think it's
Huntersville, right?
Yeah,
The Galway hooker. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. So
Yeah,
we're on our way out, and I said to him, Nicholas, put on a YouTube, because I watch YouTube for a lot of this, and he puts up a YouTube channel, and he says to me, do you know this guy Stephen Cunningham? So Steve, do you know who Stephen is?
Yeah. So he runs the Sensus Fidelium Apostolate. So I see him fairly often at the Extraordinary Form Mass on Sundays. So I know that he has quite a following. Occasionally, I listen to his stuff. It's pretty deep theology.
So if you see him at 6:00 on Saturday when we go to the ReMENant Mass, would you point him out to me? Because I want to actually meet him.
Absolutely.
So him and I are in the car, and he turns this channel on, and then he puts on what he just posted back on April 30th on St. Catherine of Siena. And don't you know, it's Father Christian that's sharing this with us, right? So Father Christian, I love him like he's my brother, and then he says to me, Dad, you can't mention it's Father Christian. I said, what are you talking about? He says, well, look in the show description. It doesn't say his name because our spiritual fathers, they don't want to be known for this. They do it humbly. And I was like, oh, more reason for me to tell everybody about this, because I didn't know about it, So here it is. And if you were to go to this YouTube channel, that Steve Cunningham here in our beautiful diocese places out for us, and check it out. It's from April 30th, and the description simply states respect and love. It says nothing about Father Christian, but I know his voice. I love him. So anyhow, it goes on to explain to us that she came from a well-known family, and she had 25 siblings. Could you imagine? And
oh no.
It's amazing. And then she lived only to 33 years old, like Stephen had said, and it was during the Black Plague, and she was known for visiting the sick. Maybe that's why she died at 33. She was visiting this. Who knows? All right. So, and then he goes on to state that popes would summon her for advice, and that she would preach to cardinals, and that she always spoke of judgment and mercy. And she was actually known for casting out demons. And what Father Christian says is that she was so filled with the Trinity that this was unheard of as a woman back then, but she would literally cast out demons. Think about this. Talk about expectant faith. That's beautiful. But the thing that spoke to me the most about St. Catherine of Siena was that she was accessible to all. And this is what our spiritual fathers, our bishop is doing here in our special diocese. He wants us to be accessible, right? So I'm going to keep going here, fellas. I'm going right into my ReMENant challenge, all right? So this is inspiring to me, all that we're talking about. This thing that we're speaking of that's being placed so beautifully it breathed into life in our special diocese. This is just the beginning. This is going to go for a long time. We're going to get to discern this, I think, until June of 2023, if I'm not mistaken. But so we've got time to explore this even further, expand on it. But for right now, I would like to challenge both our spiritual and paternal fathers alike to learn from St. Catherine of Siena, in her example, to be accessible, to become accessible, to teach and preach accessibility, and to understand that when we're accessible, we change things. So challenge our brothers to become that band of brothers that actually looks each other in the eye and, step closer to the path. Encouragement. That's what we're doing here. We're encouraging each other to step closer to the path.
Yeah, Ray, and Stephen, so much, really, really great stuff. And St. Catherine of Siena is one of my favorite saints. My mom was named after her. That's where she gets her namesake. And so, but just because she is a mystic, And I think because she, is also had a seraphic love, a very, very, very close to the heart of God type of love, that I just loved her. And so a few years back during Lent, I made it a point for me to actually read her dialogue. If you've never read it, it is heady. Like, I think I understand maybe about 5% of what she's saying in the dialogue. It's certainly a book that I have to go back and read again and again and again and again and again. I don't think I'll ever fully understand, how, just because it's so deep, right? But one of the things that stuck with me, and maybe it's because of my love for music, and one of my favorite songs is "Bridge Over Troubled Water." Saint Catherine of Siena really delves into, in the dialogue, in the beginning of the dialogue, she talks about, or her conversation with God, and this is God talking to her, talks about this bridge, that Christ is this bridge. And I just want to read to you a little bit from the dialogue, because I just think it's so beautiful, and I think we can learn a lot. And this is really my ReMENant challenge, which is very simply be like the bridge, right? Be like the bridge for others. But this is what it says. It says, and this is God talking to Saint Catherine of Siena in her dialogue. It says this: "I have made a bridge of my word, of my only begotten Son, and this is the truth. I have given you the bridge of my Son, that in order passing across the flood of the tempestuous sea in this life," see, there it is, bridge over troubled water, "you may not be drowned. Look at the bridge of my Son and see the greatness thereof, the height of divinity humbled to the earth and joined with your humanity." It talks about 3 steps in this bridge. The bridge has 3 steps, 2 of which are made with the wood of the cross, and the third still retains the great bitterness he tasted when he was given gall and vinegar to drink. In these 3 steps, you will recognize the 3 states of the soul. On the first step, then, lifting its feet from the affections of the earth, the soul strips itself of vice. On the second, it is filled with love and virtue. And on the third, it tastes peace. And it goes on and on and on and on. I'll talk about this, but I just think that when I read St. Catherine of Siena, or when I see St. Catherine of Siena, when I pray to St. Catherine of Siena, or pray for her intercession, I should say, I always think of this bridge and how beautiful it is, and all the different virtue that we can have. So, in attaining that, so think about that. The first step, the second step, and the third step, and how you remove yourself from the affections of the earth. The second is that you're filled with love and virtue, and then on the third, it tastes peace. So, those are my thoughts. She has such an amazing, deep spirituality. Read the dialogue; you'll get more of it. But yeah, so I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, guys, but it certainly was awesome being with you guys today.
Yes.
Yeah, I just say in closing, it's just so profound, the richness of these saints, and it's precisely the theme that I communicate to the kids. It's like Christ is the roadmap and the example, and those of us who walk the way of Christ and imitate him the most perfectly become saints, and they in turn become little Christs, the human roadmap for us to follow, generations and generations of future potential saints. So the encouragement is right there. They have done it. We can do it too. That's what I'd say.
Then you think about what Father Christian shares about, she was filled with the Trinity and able to cast out demons. Think of that expectant faith, and think of, a woman having that, like, she's obviously filled at that moment in that period of time, during the Black Plague. There was so many things going on around her and she was still filled with those 3 steps that Bill so beautifully brought to us.
Yeah. Well, guys, thank you so much, as always. And for all our listeners, follow the ReMENant, like the ReMENant on all of your different Facebook and social media, channels, as we continue to progress through Advent here. Know that we are praying for you during this penitential season. But thank you guys so much for being with me tonight, and to all of our listeners, may God bless you and your families. Good night.
Thank you for joining the ReMENant today. For more information about us, email theremnantshow@gmail.com That's the ReMenant show at gmail.com.